Hello and welcome to Likhawat. I'm Gautam Chaubey, your host, and this is a show about the books of Bharat. This week on Likhawat, let's start with a question. What do we owe to our profession? Of course, commitment, integrity, honesty, but beyond that, a humble awareness of its legacy, of the people and the pioneers who have led it, shaped it, reformed it. Our book this week, Women of Influence, Trend Extraordinary IS Careers, is exactly that. It's as sincere a note as a person may pen to a profession they have taken to. And joining us in the studio to discuss the book is its author, a civil servant, and currently the independent monitor of SEBI and Exim Bank, Rajni Sekhri Sibal ji.
Namaskar.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So grateful, ma'am, that you could come here. Let's start with your own journey. This book itself is about 10 extraordinary women. Your own journey is quite extraordinary. In 1986, you sealed your position in the UPSC Hall of Fame as the first woman to get the first rank in UPSC entrance. So take us through your journey from an aspirant to an IS officer.
Well, so I can not honestly say that I always wanted to be an IS officer. In fact, I didn't know enough about the career that I was taking up until I actually took the exam. I was a science graduate, and I always wanted to actually do some research in chemistry. That was my a dream that I had, and I wanted to actually discover a molecule if possible. And when I was a child, that's what I used to dream of. The journey to IS, I think, is by and large, a lot of it is destiny, because I took the exam as everybody would in the Punjab University where I did my MA.
Right.
And I qualified surprisingly, and that's where I am, that's how I'm here. But I'm delighted that this is the career I chose. This is the career that chose me, because I've always felt that the kind of canvas that my career offered and offers to anybody who joins the IS is so vast that you can actually do a lot of service, and you can make a huge difference to people's lives. I think I'd like to say what I told the interview board then. It seemed cheesy as a young 20 or 22 odd year old, but I say the same thing today, that I joined the IS to serve my country, and I continue to believe that that's what I did. That's what guided me.
But what was it like being the first woman to top this exam? Must have been a big headline in all newspapers.
Yes. I think it's, my father had this firm belief. Someone new in the UPSC was asked, okay, how did she do? A day before the result was about to be announced, and the only thing that was told was, oh, she's okay, she's done well, which meant either you're in or not in. I said, I don't know. So my father, the minute he heard it, he says, tumne top kiya hoga. So I think it's parents' blessings. It's also the newspapers blew it up. I mean, it was all over, and the TV had just started to open up and privatize, and that's when I did my first interview with the television.
Right. Must have been a source of inspiration to countless young aspirants, women aspirants in this country, ma'am.
I hope.
Ma'am, in the introduction to your book, you speak of the relative obscurity that shrouds the life and career of IS officers, as compared to the hoopla surrounding UPSC entrance exams and the results which are publicized widely in newspapers and media. Was there an episode in your own life, an incident that perhaps prompted you to take up this project of documenting the lives of these extraordinary women?
Several incidents. We all feel that a lot of what we've done needs to be put on paper, and possibly could serve, as the word you used was inspiration, to other people who either aspire to be IS officers or for anybody who reads it. Books of this genre basically are biographies, autobiographies, basically written by men about themselves, and they're, for want of a better word, a little in the face that I did this and I did this. It's a lot of this book happened not because of what I did. This book happened during COVID. There was a TV program. We were all at home, and I remember, without naming who the anchor was being very acrimonious and blaming everything on the IS. IS is a whipping boy, you know, it's a favorite whipping boy for a lot of people. And when, you know, everything, even the Mausam Kharab hai, IS ne kiya, whatever. So this was the kind of conversation that was happening. And my daughter, who was with me sitting and watching the program, she turned to me. You know, our children have been through the trials and tribulations of our own lives. Right. And they've seen us through thick and thin and difficult times that are, some of the times have been difficult. And so she turns to me and says, you know, Ma, why don't you just change the narrative? Because it is so easy for anyone to say Babu, and you know, it's a word that's not used in the correct manner, and it's also kind of connotes negative connotations it has in terms of whether or not, you know, someone is willing to meet you, or somebody who is, it represents someone who's rather arrogant, not available to the public at large, or has a mind that's already made up and not willing to see things in the right perspective. Whereas things are actually so different. You know, you all work under so much pressure. So she told me, why don't you write about yourself and change the narrative as is? And I thought about this, Gautam. So I find it difficult to talk about myself. So I did the next best thing. I did some research. I talked, I read, I got to know some of these ladies in the book I hadn't met. Right. Then one had passed away even before I started writing. And I started to put the book down about 10 extraordinary women who've actually walked that extra mile and made a huge difference in the careers of, the lives of people. And I thought it would help change the narrative that existed in the media.
Right.
Right.
Your book starts with an extraordinary chapter, Winds of Change, जो राजस्थान की पहली महिला कलेक्टर के बारे में है, ऑतिमा, और कितना मुश्किल रहा था उनके लिए पेट्रियार्कल प्रेजुडिसेस से लड़ना. क्या माहौल बदला है? Is it now easier for women to work?
Wow, so this Winds of Change is one of my favorite stories. It dates back to 1965.
Yeah, it's a difficult time for the nation.
In Park, it was very tough, and here was this woman who arrived in a backward district like Bikaner, on the border of Pakistan, right. And things were tough those days, but before which she found that the first battle she had to fight was acceptance. Right. You know, there were no other women in the collector's office, and it was just unheard of that a collector is a woman, and there were these groups of villagers who would walk into her office from yes. miles together to just see her, to see a woman sitting in a seat. Right. And in that kind of patriarchal society of the 1960s, women had long ghungats. So there is a little episode in the right. book which talks about how she got them to raise their ghungat and start having access to her office and to work.
आप पढ़िए वो, अगर आप पढ़ सकें तो.
जी, A fortnight after she joined as collector Bikaner, Otima noticed that groups of women clad in bright lehenga odhnis came to her office almost every day. They would sit under the rickety fan and watch her quietly from behind their ghungats as she went on with her work. After drinking cool water from the burnt clay matka, they would leave without saying a word. This continued for a few days. She had no idea as to what they wanted or whether it was the same women that came in each day, for the faces were hidden. One day, as a group of women came and sat before her, she gestured and told the other men to go outside and said, "Come sit on these chairs and tell me what is the problem. Now tell me, where are you from? What do you want?" There was total silence for a while, and then a soft voice from behind a red veil spoke for the entire group. "Collector sir, we are from Ambassar. We walked down from our village to see you." "Oh, but you came yesterday too, right?" There was a tinkle of bangles and a giggle ran through the group. No, that wasn't us," came the response. "Those were women from Asira, a different village. They told us about you." "Okay, so tell me, what can I do for you? But first you must lift your ghungats." There was an audible gasp of disbelief, something that was unheard of. how can I tell who you are unless I see you from Asera, from Ambassar, from where? I need to see you to be able to know what work you have. So, and then she actually, it goes on to how she convinces them.
Right.
She tells them that I'm a wife and a mother like you. I'm married into a Rajasthani family like yours. And like you, I too place my pallu above my head, as is the tradition, to show respect to my in-laws. But I don't hide my face behind a veil. I know it must be claustrophobic for you, and that you can scarcely breathe in this heat. Take off the ghungat. Don't stay cloistered behind it. Covering your head shows respect. A ghungat down to your waist seems to say, I'm scared of you. I'm scared of showing my face to you. How can the strong and courageous women of Rajasthan be scared? You should fear no one, none at all. There was total silence as she spoke. No one took even a sip of water. And why should you be scared of me? I'm here to help you. I may be the collector of Bikaner, but I'm a woman first. Come, remove your ghungat and talk to me without fear.
Right.
And then the unbelievable occurred. An elder woman who looked about 50 lifted her ghungat and smiled. The others followed suit.
Remarkable.
So even as she was working like an administrator towards the betterment of other things, and ensuring that the district was prepared for the war, she would go out of her way to actually ensure that social justice was done where required. Yeah, and there are other incidents about it.
In fact, the next question is about IAS Anuradha, who features in the chapter Saving Lives, which is about India's triumphant war against polio, and how it was her out-of-the-box thinking which ensured that India prevailed in this battle. Take us through that story as well.
So
it's an important historical landmark for us Indians to take great pride in saying कि हमने पोलियो को परास्त कर दिया है.
Absolutely, because जब अनुराधा ने शायद हेल्थ डिपार्टमेंट में ज्वाइन किया, उस समय तक हम लोग करीबन 20-22 साल से we were in the mission mode,
Right.
And a mission, as a mission is defined, is something that begins with a certain date. You work very strictly on it and very, very conscientiously, and then it finishes on a particular date. It doesn't carry on for 22 years. Year after year, the polio mission went on, Teen Boond Jeevan Ki, that, and we had this, it was a massive exercise across India. And at the time that she joined, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and India, and the third was, there was an African country, I think it was Nigeria, were the only countries that were still infected by polio. The rest of the world was polio free. And viruses have no barriers. So there is a chance that a virus from Pakistan will travel to China, will travel elsewhere, right? So there was concern. And since 2011, because of that out-of-box thinking, we've been polio-free. India's been absolutely polio-free. And this can only be understood by someone who suffered this awful disease, which is so debilitating, or the parent of somebody who has a polio-affected child. I don't want to give too many details, but the thinking out of the box was actually asking the right questions. So what was, and maybe also looking at indicators that made a difference. So the indicators that were earlier looked at in the earlier missions were how many lives are covered, how many children are covered. Anuradha came and she started asking how many children are left out. Now that's a different way of looking at it, and they focused only on the areas and the children who were left out, whether it is across an island, in the delta of the Sundarbans, whether it is on a hillside, a dhani in some village, but उन्हीं को देखना है जिनको दिया नहीं गया. Do not ask questions about how many covered. It makes no difference. If you've still left out those 2%, there is a reason for it to spread. Right.
In fact, इस पूरी किताब
and much more. There is more to it,
Right. In fact, इस पूरी किताब में जो महिला अधिकारी हैं, जो आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स थिंकिंग है या जो एम्पैथी वो लेकर आती हैं अपने कामकाज में, उस पर बड़ा जोर दिखता है. डॉक्टर मालिनी शंकर की एक कहानी है जो एक नक्सल अफेक्टेड एरिया में है और वहाँ वो जो काम करती है. एंड द स्टोरी इन फैक्ट makes us realize the amount of personal perils these civil servants put themselves through to get work done. The question is, when a woman is posted in a conflict zone, in a violence hit zone, where threat lurks large, do they bring something special to how they address the crisis, how they address this violence that lurks the place of work?
A certain amount of courage, definitely, and a certain amount of commitment. In fact, humne, may I read from the book here somewhere?
Please,
Let me just see, so that you understand what the issue was. So it starts with, she's reached her guest house, and here's a knock at the door at about 9:30 at night. And in that part of the world, 9:30 is very late.
Right.
So a strange sound in the Naxalite belt was enough to alarm anybody after dark. Who is it? She asked nervously. This is Malini. The police. Please open the door. Malini peeped through the keyhole. Now she is actually a development officer, fairly senior officer, CEO of the Zilla Parishad, but she is concerned. कि पुलिस कह रहे हैं कौन है. She saw that a posse of policemen was indeed standing outside her door. Or could it be Naxalites dressed up like in police uniforms, she thought. All the stories were encounters that she'd heard earlier since she joined as CEO of Chandrapur in 1988 played up in her mind. Which police? Where are you from? Which thana? There's been an ambush, ma'am. It is urgent. We need to talk to you, ma'am. But I don't know you. We will speak in the morning. Then she heard another voice. Pobade here, ma'am. A contingent from the Maharashtra police is standing here with me. They want to speak to you. Please open the door. Something terrible has happened. Malini recognized the voice of her faithful driver, Milan Bobade, and she peeped out of the keyhole, and that's when she opened the door, and then she was told about this incident. A few days later, somebody from the headquarters, a minister, comes to the head office in Chandrapur, and asks her a very strange question. So I don't want to tell you the backdrop, but I'll just read through this. A month after she started working, the Secretary Rural Development, Maharashtra, no, not the minister, Secretary Rural Development came to visit the district from Mumbai. He was aghast to find her posted there. That's her secretary, by the way. And the question was, which idiot posted you here? She calmly responded, the government, sir. Well, the government must make amends then, he said with a laugh. You, a young girl from Tamil Nadu, all on your own in Kalapani, that's not fair. And why did you not protest when they posted you here? Now, that's another thing about most women. They go by their asked to go. They rarely ever interfere in postings and transfers and seek postings. To his surprise, Malini said, I am happy to be posted here, sir. Let me go back to Bombay. We will transfer you immediately to an area that's not so rough. No, sir, please do not, Malini pleaded. But why? Anyone else will jump at this offer. Then Malini replied, Chandrapur has remained backward for too long, sir. A great deal needs to be done here, and in the last 1 month, I've come to understand the people and the place. I want to work here, sir. I like working here. Please do not transfer me out. I would like to be able to make a difference in the lives of people.
How bold and inspiring.
I know I can make a difference.
How inspiring that is. Ma'am, as someone who has authored several books, you would concur when I say that what contributes to the shape of the book is not just the thing that gets into the printed pages, but also the exclusion. Was there a story fitting to be the 11th chapter of the book that you would have perhaps wanted to include?
Oh, many.
मैं चाहूँगा कि कोई एक ऐसी कहानी आप सुनाएं हमें.
No, so I have
या दूसरी किताब एक लिखें.
No, with Penguin, with Penguin I've already had this understanding that I'm supposed to write a sequel to this, where about all services, not merely the IS, railways and police and foreign, and whether extraordinary people who walk that extra mile, and both men and women, so not restricting it. This is the first book where I've thought that let me restrict and focus it to one set of people where I can pick out the best from a smaller, smaller group. And also, as I said in the opening lines of the book, I've said stories of women, and that's how my author's note begins.
Yeah.
It says, I've often wondered why some stories do not get told. And then I go on to say how stories about women do not get told. More because even when I started talking to these 10 extraordinary women, whereas they are happy to talk about the situation, the problems that beset it, the strategies they used, the thoughts that came to them, whatever pressures they had, everything. But they weren't happy to talk about themselves. In fact, if you notice, there is no surname in any of the names.
Yes.
So I have used their names, and somewhere I've also altered a name here or there. But they would say, I mean, it's okay. And they would put it, brush it under the table, and they're not to be brushed under the table. What really happened is tremendous. As you've gathered, Anuradha is Anuradha Gupta, Otima is Otima Borde, Malini is Malini Shankar. So these are people who actually need to be known. They've done some tremendous work, and I said, and I felt that the world should know about it.
Right.
Right.
This book appears to offer a gendered reading, or rather rereading of the history of civil services in India. हम अक्सर बात करते हैं इतिहास का पुनर्पाठ होना चाहिए, कभी कास्ट के पर्सपेक्टिव से, कभी रेस के पर्सपेक्टिव से, कभी किसी कम्युनिटी के पर्सपेक्टिव से. ये मुझे लगता है कि जेंडर के पर्सपेक्टिव से एक प्रयास हुआ है. बट व्हाट आई आल्सो सी इज़ a kind of a history of post-independence India here, from the perspective of these extraordinary, courageous women officers. आप इसे कैसे देखती हैं?
So you're right, it's true. Any tale, any story which is set in the background that it is, gives you a deeper perspective about the time and the era and what were the problems that beset that particular society. And this book, in fact, covers all the states, most of the states of India. In fact, from Arunachal Pradesh in the east to Rajasthan and Maharashtra in the west, goes down to Karnataka in the south, and up, I think the others are Punjab and Haryana and all in the north. And of course, central government policies, etc., that are long term. And as you rightly said, the oldest story dates back to 1965. The most recent is 2017, 2016. Yeah, so it's really spanning history of almost 70 odd years, 60 odd years.
But also history of India in a certain sense.
And history of India, because times have changed, things have changed, but by and large, some problems are sticky and continue to be the same. Some problems just refuse to go.
Where do you see civil services heading towards? Or the young men who seek to join civil services, what challenges await them? Since you have this panoramic view through this book and through your own illustrious career, which is 4 decades long.
आज की तारीख में challenges are some that are continuing from the past, and some that are fresh, some that are new, some that require reinventing themselves in terms of how they approach problems.
Right.
I think one of the major issues they need, of course, technology has advanced a lot. That's one of the areas where they would be looking at. For example, in the fourth story where the riot was about to break and orders were given from the state government, the protagonist could say, oh, I can't hear, mujhe sunai nahi pad raha, aap kya keh rahe hain, and put down the phone, because you could say that the phones are not working, and you continue to do what you think is right on the spot, because this has always been the thinking in governance that the officer on the spot is the best judge of what needs to be done at that particular time. Right. Now that is not possible. You know, a lot of your the way you function is being informed by others who are not there on the spot. You're constantly in the media's eye. You're also, you know, political interference has always been there from the beginning. But well, political guidance, political
Right.
because that's the way it needs to be.
Right.
But there are more challenges.
No challenges.
Yeah.
आपकी दूसरी किताबों के बारे में भी थोड़ा बात करते हैं. एक
जी.
बड़ी खूबसूरत सी किताब मुझे दिखी, कामधेनु, which is about the cows of India. It's quite
जी.
inspiring and quite intriguing. How did you go about writing this book? What inspired you to write this wonderful book?
जी. So कामधेनु शायद मेरी पहली किताब थी, which got published.
Right.
And this I wrote. So मेरी जितनी किताबें मैंने लिखी और जो publish हुई हैं, they fall in 3 genres.
Right.
One is poetry, because as you know,
Yes,
Just
you have
Clouds and
Fragrant
Beyond
Words, yeah.
and Fragrant Words are
Yes.
anthologies that have been
Right.
published by Bloomsbury and by West Word also. But Kamadhenu, I wrote. The other genre is basically about my work.
Right.
So Kamadhenu I wrote when I was JS Daring.
Yeah. Then there is one
Are
on
you
disaster
prepared for a
management.
disaster? Was
Yes.
when I was looking after disaster management in MHA, and it actually puts that down. And there are some books like The Guru and The Haunting Himalayas, and
Right.
this which I wrote during the book that we're talking about,
Right.
Women of Influence. During the COVID, so that's when I had more time to think, to actually put my thoughts together, and these were written even as I was working. कामधेनु कहाँ से लिखी, क्यों लिखी? इसी जब मैं एक मेरी सोच है कि आप दफ्तर में बैठ के, टेबल के ऊपर बैठ के और कुर्सी पे बैठ के आराम से एक ही जगह पे बैठ के आप पॉलिसी नहीं लिख सकते. आपको यू हैव टू गो आउट देयर, सी व्हाट्स हैपनिंग ऑन द ग्राउंड, मीट द स्टेक होल्डर्स, फाइंड आउट व्हाट आर देयर प्रॉब्लम्स. आई यूज्ड टू ट्रैवल अ लॉट. So when I joined the agriculture ministry, I would travel a lot, and by one of my travels I learned about a cow called Siri.
Right.
Siri एक गाय है जो सिक्किम में पाई जाती है, एंड वो पहाड़ों पर ही अपना घास से ही अपना पेट पूजा करती है. I mean, वो चरती है, उसको कहीं बांध कर खिलाते नहीं हैं, जैसे चारा नहीं डालते, वो पहाड़ में जो घास उगती है उसी में. तो उनका उस सीरी का जो मक्खन होता है, उसके जो दिए जलते हैं इन द monasteries is of that cow.
Oh.
So I was in a monastery and I found very nice smell of lavender. हल्की सी
Right.
लैवेंडर
Right.
के फूल की खुशबू आ रही थी, तो मुझे बोला ये सीरी की गाय से बनते हैं, और हमारी सोच ये है कि इसका अगर दिया जलेगा तो आप अच्छाइयाँ आएंगी आपकी लाइफ में और बुराइयाँ दूर जाएंगी. So I found that fascinating. थोड़े दिनों बाद मैं शायद कर्नाटका गई, and I heard of this cow called अमृत महल.
Right.
वो जो राजा थे मैसूर के, उनके यहाँ क्योंकि दूध उसका अमृत महल का जाता था, तो अमृत महल उसका नाम पड़ा, उसके लिए वो बनाई गई थी. एंड अमृत महल की 10,000 बैल टीपू सुल्तान की आर्मी में थे, एंड सिंपली बिकॉज दे हैड द एबिलिटी टू वॉक फॉर 2.5 days and nights without food and water, and they would carry the ammunition, जो भी उनका बैटल का वो गन्स थी, आर्मर थी, वो ले जाते थे. Then I went to Gujarat. I heard the story about the Gir. So it was like fascinating. I just, like for example, अगर आप खोलिएगा किताब, this is actually a coffee table book.
Right.
You will find कि Indus Valley civilization में जो डिपिक्ट किया गया है सील में, जो बैल की सील है, उसका जो पीठ है, that is exactly like a Gir cow, and the horns are exactly like Kankrij. So you can actually see that over the years these breeds have evolved. So this is a book about जो गायें, जिसको बॉस इंडिकस कहते हैं, जो कि हमारी देसी A2 नस्ल की गायें जिन्हें कहा जाता है. जी.
How interesting, ma'am. One final question, because this कार्यक्रम का नाम लिखावट है, तो हम जानना चाहेंगे कि आपकी लिखावट आगे कहाँ जा रही है? What is your next project?
Wow, that's asking a lot. I have already promised that I would be doing that other second sequel to this. But right now, what's on my mind, and I think I want to work on that project, is the Constituent Assembly के जो members थे, कुछ उनके बारे में मैं research कर रही हूँ, and I hope to bring out a book on that, and maybe something that is that also impinges on their personal lives, so that it's of interest to the reader. Not so I need to do greater research to actually look at it.
थैंक यू सो मच रजनी जी,
Pleasure.
आप हमारे साथ जुड़ी और हमें इन 10 ज़बरदस्त महिलाओं के बारे में बताया, उनके करियर से रूबरू करवाया और भी कई सारी बातें की, यूपीएससी के बारे में समझाया। आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया।
Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you viewers, I'm sure you've loved today's episode. To check out the previous episodes of Likhawat, go to the Likhawat playlist on Sansad TV's YouTube channel and do post your comments there. I am Gautam Chaube, your host. Namaste.
संसद टीवी के और भी प्रोग्राम्स देखने के लिए सब्सक्राइब करें हमारा YouTube चैनल और हाँ, इन्हें लाइक और शेयर करना ना भूलें।